Let me know when we're ready. We're going.
Minutes.
Going live. Just to warn you. Ready.
Is that me?
It's yes. Yes, yes, yes.
I think it was Thursday.
Now we're good. Alex, can you hear us online or Serena?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, with that, welcome everybody to our March meeting. I freak out every time before I say the month. Our March meeting of the Environment and Climate Committee. We although don't have a large number of agenda items, it's going to be a busy one today. So we'll try to move quickly, starting with roll call. Alex.
Here.
Andrew. Here. Covey.
Here.
Kelly, I don't see. Laura.
Here.
Lauren.
Here.
Mark.
Here.
Niels here. Rory.
Here.
Serena.
Here.
And Smita. I also don't see. So Kelly and Smita aren't here.
Kelly mentioned she'll be 30 minutes late.
Okay, great. And then any ex officios, Jackie or Sasha, I don't think are here either. Do we have, I don't have minutes on the agenda,
Oh,
but,
shoot, I'm sorry.
okay,
We need to do that still.
great. With it not being on the agenda, did people still have an opportunity to review the minutes from last month?
Did send them,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does anybody have any comments or notes on the minutes?
Mhm.
I mostly look at minutes to make sure that that in the notes, I didn't sign up for something that I didn't want. So that's the main clarification that I look for.
It was, I guess the one question I had is it said it was a voice vote to approve the minutes. Are we still approving them or are we just?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are things looking good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody need any edits to the minutes? Otherwise, voice or everyone assumed approval. Wonderful. Okay. Public comment. Oh, does somebody want to lead the public comment?
Sure, let me just take a look to see if we have.
Or there's no attendees.
Okay, would anyone in the audience like to make a public comment? Okay. Good.
Great. Staff updates.
Okay, the two updates I have is a reminder that next Wednesday, I'm going to be going to the council to have a discussion about the policy options analysis for natural gas and electrification policy. So I did meet with the natural gas working group, met once to just kind of further refine and discuss that, but still generally similar to what we've discussed in the past. So we'll be going to get some direction from the council on if they want to move forward with that. And if so, I'll give an update at the next meeting, kind of mapping out the path ahead, because the proposed process that I'm suggesting next week is a little bit different than how we discussed it last. But it's kind of too big to get into right now. And I figured we'll talk about it after the council gives approval for that. So that's kind of a big thing coming up for us. And then the other update was I sent an email about it just a day or two ago about the landfill siting discussion. So I think, as most of you are familiar with, the county is in the process of finding a site for a new landfill and solid waste management facility for the region for the next, 100+ years. And the city sits on a committee that is providing a recommendation on what site to choose. There's 2 sites basically to choose from right now. And that committee is in April coming to a point where we are providing a recommendation to staff to bring to the Board of County Commissioners on which of those landfill sites the committee recommends moving forward with. So we're going to have a discussion with our council stewardship subcommittee to get just some, it's not like a formal council decision, but just some general direction and gauge their thoughts on the question. We're going to be having that discussion with the council stewardship subcommittee on March 25th. And we would like to invite 1 or 2 ECC members who would like to also contribute to that discussion to that meeting. And we'll have the solid waste staff from the county will come and they'll give an overview of kind of, you know, the key things to know. So I just wanted to see if any committee members wanted to volunteer to participate in that. We talked about it with the waste and materials working group because they met yesterday or 2 days ago. As there's obvious overlap, but it can be anyone. And then the additional thing that I wrote in the email was that if you wanted to participate and you really wanted to dig in further, next Tuesday, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee is having like a 3-hour meeting where we're really going to do a deep dive into the whole analysis that's been done because they did a pretty comprehensive engineering analysis on the 2 potential finalist sites. So if anyone had so much free time that they would are interested in listening to that, that would be a good way to become really informed if you wanted to. So I'm hoping today we can get 1 or 2 people who want to volunteer to participate in that, which is why I sent out an email about it in advance. So is anyone interested?
Who's on the subcommittee?
Yeah, the waste and materials group is Serena, Kelly, Alex, and Cubby. So I think the only person
And Smita.
and Smita, yeah.
Did anyone on the committee express interest or no?
I feel like there might have been a little bit of interest during the working group. I am interested, but I'm going to, for capacity reasons, not get on any other committees right now.
And it's not another, it's really just 1 meeting is the main commitment. Is that the council stewardship subcommittee, but I think you might be out of town because it's spring break week. I don't know what dates I just know you're going out of town around that time.
Okay. Yeah, first week of April.
Oh, no, it's the last
Okay.
week of March. It's spring break week.
Okay, so it's coming up soon. Well, I know Kelly's not here. Is Serena, who else is from the committee here right now? Serena and Alex?
I could probably make the meeting if no one else can. Serena.
That's Serena.
That was Serena.
That's Serena. And we can also check once Kelly joins in case she has more interest. Than Serena. The way Serena put it, I felt like she can do it, but it's not like she's hopping for it.
No. I want to make sure we have representation so I can make time if needed. But if somebody else has capacity and has more interest, definitely.
Yeah, and the minimum commitment is truly just 1 hour on March 25th, because that's the amount of information you'll get there is the same amount of information that the counselors who are participating will get. So that should be enough to, join that discussion.
Yeah.
The coming to the SWAC meeting next week is just for your guys' information if you wanted
So
more info.
I can also then kind of put my name in the hat as well, because I did attend the siting informational meeting they had last year.
Mhm.
So I did get a lot of information there
Yeah.
too, if that's helpful.
That
And
would
then let me just double check my calendar, but I think I can make it.
Okay.
I'm not volunteering, just the question, do we know what the key trade-offs are between the sites? Are there? like,
There
water
are a
quality
couple, and
issues
that's
or-
what the, I don't want to speak to them now for fear of just not getting them correct, but, that's what the solid waste director will come and kind of present at that meeting.
I probably am not available, but if somebody has to drop, or if there's online availability, I might be able to join.
There is online availability for sure.
Yeah, I'm totally happy to join,
Okay.
but can let the waste group kind of take the spots if they're available and and want to join?
Yeah, you said it's 11:30 to 12:30 an hour.
Yeah,
I can make that.
okay, cool. All right, well, I'll follow up over email with all of you and we'll just come up with a final plan.
Great.
The two finalist sites is there's one that's on an existing gravel mine called the Moon Pit site that's owned by Hooker Creek. And then the other one is an undisturbed area of land out by Pine Mountain
Oh.
in the Milton Valley.
Differences. Interesting.
Yeah. And they both, I mean, there's trade-offs, like they both have certain advantages and disadvantages, of course, so it's definitely an interesting one to dig into.
I think the one note from, I can't speak for the transportation committee, but just, landfill siting is a waste and also transportation component, so. I guess highlighting the transportation piece of distance traveled and then, power availability of the site for electric, transportation.
Yeah,
Those are the things that I've contributed at earlier parts of the process, but just non-high level, like probably not the main focus of it, but the earlier that those get included, the more likely that those options will remain available.
cool, thank you.
And Cassie, I think when you mentioned it, you were looking for 1 or 2 committee members
Mhm.
potentially. So if there is anyone from a transportation working group that wants to join, it sounds like there's a spot.
Yeah, and we can follow up, Neil, and the initial ask had been like, oh, the committee leadership, is typically who we invite to those things, and because we have the waste and materials group, that's why I just suggested that we put it out to them first, but if you're able to join virtually, Neil, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And could I just suggest, because Kelly's not here, can we just at the end when we're doing the,
Agenda review.
yeah, if we can just see if
Okay,
she's more
okay.
interested than I am, then I'm happy to.
Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds great. Okay, that's it for updates.
Awesome. So we're going to jump into our tree code update, or the letter which was sent out in the material. So I don't know if Rory or Cubby wanna take this on.
Sure, and just to kind of preface it, we have about 10 minutes for discussion, so it's a pretty short in terms of discussion time, and that's why we wanted to make sure we shared in advance of the meeting, the letter. And I know I see Pauline's here. I don't know if that's just to provide context if needed, or if there's other reasons. Okay, just want to make sure you had the opportunity if there was something. So do you want me to just share the letter on the screen and?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
I'll just pull it up since I'm sharing already.
okay. I guess to kick off the discussion, did everyone have a chance to review the letter? Are there any thoughts, concerns, suggestions? It's in line with what we discussed at the last meeting, but I also know that discussion was also fairly brief. But hopefully there was more time to digest the memo and the main pieces of the letter with this additional month time that we had between the last meeting and this one.
I like the letter.
Okay.
I think it's it was clear, it focused on like a tangible ask. And also gave context of like, representation that you were on the committee, but that also we just wanted to weigh in as a group. So I'm supportive of it.
Okay, thanks, Neil. I was just gonna say thanks to Rory for really helping polish up the letter. I appreciate his help, especially on very short notice when we needed to get it out, so.
Sure. I also support the letter. I think it's a pretty modest change to the percentages that are a core part of the code amendments that are proposed. Just 20 to 25%, the preservation standard. And then I think Covey did a great job of recognizing all the other flexibility and paths that are kind of built into what the True Act developed. And then the one other thing I was going to note that we did kind of add was I reviewed the recommendation that came from True Act, and they had a few like outside of scope recommendations, just like other considerations that came along. And one of them related to the CCAP, and it's something we talked about when, as a committee, we first discussed this tree code update issue, which was the like bigger picture tree canopy across the whole city, and trying to do like an inventory and some like bigger policy questions about what a tree canopy across the city and not just like lot specific development situations. So what I saw on the TRUAC recommendation, and others in the room want to clarify because I wasn't part of that, but what I just saw in the written recommendation was, you scroll down a little more, Cassie, can you? Yeah, so the ECC also supports the outside of scope recommendation to consider and support the management and expansion of Bend's urban tree canopy and other city initiatives, including the upcoming CCAP update. So one extra statement we added in, even though, again, everyone recognizes that's outside of the scope that TRUAC was given.
I guess I'll just share one last quick thought. TRUAC had, or not TRUAC, the city of Bend had one of their tree code Q&A sessions last week as well, or week before last, which I attended, and just I submitted individual personal comment as well with the similar kind of question to the panel that was here. And I think the one thing they did mention, which they mentioned before, is that the data basically just it's based on 8 developments, and that it may not necessarily be a representative sample, which I do understand. I think I still come back to, well, that's the best data that's been provided. So if we're still basing our decision making on that data, it still makes sense until different data or more comprehensive data is provided. I feel like it makes sense to still base it off the data that's available.
I'll also add, I think that I had maybe asked earlier, like about comments for the additional programs or outside of scope pieces. But then when I was reading, I had like done that generally speaking, just like as a general comment, but then I was looking through some of the recommendations and I realized some of them were tied to some transportation pieces that might have some trade-offs that actually would warrant more discussion. Like there was a recommendation about curb tight sidewalks, which have a different transportation context. So this one seems good and I don't have issues with, so it's great.
I was gonna ask about that because I remembered in the memo from last month, there was a longer list of outside scope recommendations. So thanks for clarifying that, Neil.
And then just process wise, we can have a little bit more discussion, and then this is something that we can actually vote to approve and send. And then actually we'll remember to send it too, because I think one of our letters that we voted to approve, everyone knew that it happened on the receiving end, but I don't think we officially shared it.
Which one else?
I don't remember, one of the letters that we wrote and approved, then somebody was like, I don't know if I saw a copy of that letter. I think Barb was like, did we actually get a copy? And we're like, oh no.
Well, should we discuss like what is the order of operations and who will actually send it? Do we?
I think,
The chair typically.
okay, I will send it.
You'll send
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that- would you say so, Mary? If a committee's gonna send a letter to another
I mean, this
committee?
one's a little odd because probably was a representative from the
Oh, yeah.
ECC, but that group is now done. And
Well, and this is to the
Council
planning
did-
commission.
yeah,
Didn't ask.
so, yeah, didn't ask ECC to weigh in, so the whole process is a little bit odd for this
Yeah.
to be happening, so I think you can decide how you want. It, when council asks for you to weigh in, definitely the chair should
Okay.
sign it. But since the committee's work is done, I think it's appropriate for the chair to sign it if the ECC wants to send something in to the planning commission. And you might also want to send it to council as well. That's the land use process now is to both.
So I guess process wise, if there's any other additional comments, now's your time. And then if not, then we'll welcome a motion to approve or support this letter. I don't know what the language would be. Approve this letter to be sent. Yeah.
I can make that motion. Is there
I
official
guess.
language I need to use, or?
Well, no, just any more additional comments
Oh,
on
yes.
like whether we move forward with this or not. Online, remembering. Not seeing anything online either. Okay. So, welcome a motion.
So I'll make a motion to approve this letter as it is.
I will second.
Great. All in favor? Everybody present, and then online,
Alex has her hand.
I see
raised.
Alex's
Raising
hand,
my hand.
and Serena's hand. And then I don't think there's anybody abstaining or voting no, because I think that's everybody online and present. So wonderful.
Perfect.
Thanks for working through that as a group and participating in a big messy city process that with 9 of 5 meetings or whatever it was.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so we can jump into our main agenda item for this meeting, which is the CCAP Communications Workshop.
Perfect. So just as a reminder of the context of this, we have a lot of strategies that are prioritized for this year, and multiple of our working groups are focused on outreach and education and different communications. And there's been a lot of ideas about ways that we should change our website or other outreach materials we want to distribute to the community. And we've been doing a lot of talking in those working groups about, or starting to talk about how, the specific messaging that we might want to include and the process that we want to go through to develop that. So we asked our communications director, Renee Mitchell, to come and do a workshop for us today that's going to help us kind of begin to come up with a good plan for that. And so we're going to be kind of focused on CCAP messaging as a whole, because all the information that we want to give out among those topics kind of all ties back together to that common thread of like, this is part of our CCAP, this is why we're doing it. And so Renee is going to walk us through a workshop today to start distilling that down. So Renee, if you want to come up, and Bernal will be co-facilitating, if you want to kick us off.
Is there anyone online?
Yeah, so we do have two
Okay.
members online, so Serena and Alex, we will, we'll just make sure that we're, but feel free to just shout out into the room, but we'll also try to, make sure we're paying close attention to
Okay.
you raising your hand or anything.
Okay.
To participate, and we'll be writing some stuff down on, worksheets and that sort of thing, so you might not be able to see it, the virtual attendees, but we'll definitely, make sure to include your ideas in that as you share them.
Okay, hi everyone. It's kind of funny to do a workshop like this.
Flexible.
So I mean, a perfect world, I'd probably break you into groups, but since we have folks online, it wasn't really gonna work that way. So as Cassie said, what we're trying to do is really hone in what our key messages are. And through that, I'm gonna ask you a series of questions. There are no wrong or right answers. I really just ask all of you just to share what's the first thing that comes to mind. And we might drill down. So I might say, Andrew, is it? Andrew?
Yes.
Okay. Like, Andrew, what do you mean by that? So, I mean, I might come back with some follow-up questions. And as Cass said, I think the most important thing is to think of the committee's work, if you will, like an umbrella message. Like, try not to get too specifics on programs. Does that make sense? And if we start to go down that road, we'll put those on a piece of paper. We'll have a parking lot for those. Is that the same? We'll put them elsewhere.
Bike rack.
Yes, bike rack, excuse me. We will put those on the bike rack, and then come back to them. Okay? Any questions? Have any of you ever done something like this? Okay. Excited?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Are your creative brains on?
Yes.
Okay.
Should I do?
Yes, I think we should maybe put some up on the wall so we can.
What'd you say?
It's a tube copy. So sorry for didn't see my calendar. That's so embarrassing. So number one, what is the purpose of this communications effort? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish?
Just shouting out.
Just shout out. Are you ready? No, so I would just say number one, purpose / accomplish.
Get more residents involved in taking CCAP actions,
Taking what?
taking actions.
Taking action. Okay, so I'm gonna drill down, like, what kind of action do you want them to take?
I think there's a whole variety.
Okay.
That sort of encompass all of the CCAP actions,
Okay,
but those include how they deal with waste, all different kinds of waste, how they deal with energy use, how they deal with transportation. Those are key areas.
okay.
So I'm creating big buckets.
So waste, energy, transportation. Okay. So, we can maybe later on dive into the specific actions for each of those.
Yeah.
Okay, but
There's
so,
a lot.
okay. So we want, community members to take action in those 3 different areas. And in the communication, we will share with them how they can actually take action, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anything else?
Alex, online.
Alex? Did you get that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with what was just said, but I would say education is a piece of that too. So not just taking the actions, but understanding why they hopefully will take the actions or why they should take the actions.
Okay, so do you feel like there's a point in this communication, almost giving like a state of the city, like why this committee exists? Why we're doing this type of work, so there's a good understanding? So it's almost like we have to gain a little understanding and awareness of the issues and then encourage them to take action?
Yeah, I think I know we're gonna probably dive more into the specific details, like you said, in the actions that we want to be addressed. But I think I could be wrong. I think it's less about educating about like why this committee exists and what we do, and more, I guess I'm thinking like educate the community on how they can take steps to help combat, climate change and things like that. And, based on those categories that were just mentioned, like, what is the impact of, X, Y, and Z, so that they can understand. And I feel like that would hopefully drive folks to want to take actions, because it's all voluntary, what we're going to be suggesting, I believe, as far as this education component. So having a better understanding of the impact of these actions on the environment, which would hopefully just further prompt them to actually take the actions that we would recommend through this campaign.
And do you all have information or data points on the impact?
Yeah.
Okay, you do.
Some information.
Some,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, and just to clarify, Alex, sorry, I misspoke, I wasn't necessarily with why the committee exists, but more of educating the community on the issues and what we need to do about it. So that's what I was referring to. Is that correct? Okay. Mark?
Just a quick question, because I missed the last meeting. Is this at all tied to the CCAP update as well? Are we trying to elicit input to inform how that update process moves forward, or is this?
I would say this is
Separate.
primarily like us starting to implement the existing CCAP actions. We have a bunch of actions that are like outreach and education focused, so not really about the upcoming update. Unless any of you disagree, but I'm just kind of thinking in terms of us moving forward with the existing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on purpose or what we're trying to accomplish?
This might be implied by the other two, but I think we want people to be excited and motivated about taking climate action. Which hopefully the education gets us there and then they take the action, but I think that's
great.
Yeah.
There's a question related to that later on, so we'll come back to that, but I like that. Like, you want to motivate folks, right? You want them maybe a sense of pride, they want to do this.
Mhm.
Okay. And we get to a question around tone, which is kind of related to that. So we'll come back to it.
Do you think we'll get in this conversation to those specific groups or audiences for this outreach later? Because I'm thinking about, I think we're probably generically thinking about household residents, but
Yes.
if there are businesses, institutions, even visitors, all of those dimensions.
Yes, the third question is the target audience.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I wasn't sure if we had to
Third
find.
questions for you all.
Great.
All right.
I wasn't sure
Okay.
if it had to include deciding who the audience is. Okay.
Okay,
I want to bring it up there and then I'll hold it up.
Okay.
People can see it.
all right, are we ready to move on to the next one? Oh, Rory.
One other, I think for at least a few of the CCAP actions, we recognize that the city's most effective role is kind of as a partner, because the city is perhaps not like the direct implementer of whatever the action is. So I see maybe some of the purpose leading into the side of things is for the city to like be the best partner to the other organization to bolster work that other actors are doing to accomplish what the action calls for.
What other part, like the environmental center or other organizations are doing?
So the one that comes to mind from the transportation side of things is CET and transit, and some conversations we've had with their staff.
So let's just pretend we did a campaign. Let's just say there was ads in the source. Who would this be from? Would it be from the city of Bend? As a call to action, would maybe direct people to the website? Or would you see directing people to find out information about other organizations?
Both.
Okay, no wrong, remember, no wrong, right answers. Okay, both?
I think it depends. That's where it's like,
How we
what is the
decide.
action? Is it
Okay.
super broad or like more narrow?
Okay, but the sign off would be City of Bend. Okay, great. That's helpful, thank you. I think when the three of us talked, we mentioned that, yeah. Okay, you ready to move on to number two? Oh, God.
Yeah, I think on that note, I'll just also add to Rory's point. I think there's also opportunity both working with the partners in that way, but also supporting actions at the state level or federal level and kind of getting people a little bit more connected about advocacy if there are any actions, CCAP specifically talking about that. So there's actions they can take on the individual kind of community level, but also maybe connecting them or at least informing them of other ways to also take climate action.
Okay, would you say it's a primary goal, a secondary goal, a tertiary goal?
Depends on the thing, depends on the specific action, because for some actions, there's a lot people can do on the individual and community level, but there's certain things that make more sense at a state or federal level.
Okay. I'm just thinking, messaging can really only do one thing.
Yeah.
So, and we might, maybe this might be a place for that type of messaging. I used to have a saying in my ad agency, if I throw 6 balls at Neil, how many is he gonna catch? Don't
Probably
say 6.
zero.
Yeah. But yeah, you're gonna do catch like 1 or 2, so it's like, making sure we don't
That's
do
fair.
that, kitchen sink thing. So if there's a place for that, then we can have its own message. Or, could that be on the website? Or, so just something to think about.
Yeah.
Okay? And I bet you catch me. I know, 6 balls came at me, and I'd be like, what are you? All right.
Some way.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to number 2. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Good job. Okay, what are the challenges or constraints?
I think one of the challenges is just where people are looking for trusted information, or like, is the city is the city the right messenger?
Okay,
Um,
great.
yeah.
So trust in the city, are we the right ones to be delivering the message?
mhm.
Okay.
I think another one is, we've talked a lot about a website, but like web content is only as good as we get people there. So kind of like all of the surrounding marketing and channels to push a message out.
Okay. Can you, that's,
Repeat that.
Like actually reaching people where they are.
your challenges?
Challenges to achieving our purpose.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think people perceive that a lot of these actions will cost them,
Okay.
or they don't see the direct benefit to them. Or it's just one more thing they don't have time to prioritize.
It's good. So overcoming that, it takes time, it takes money, so I'm just not gonna worry about it.
Are these also challenges to get the message and have this be received?
Sure.
I'm just thinking like limited attention spans, but also just so much information.
Yeah.
Most people are receiving, and then almost tuning it out, because at the moment they see something that's like, maybe like they're tuning out climate change things or climate action things, or things where they have to put in some effort. So how do you put the message in a way where it's more receptive? I guess they're in a more receptive state for it.
Right. Yeah, I think I've heard now that it takes 16 times for someone to actually get the message and hear it, and even more to do something about it. Way back when I started doing this, it was like 3. Well, if you hit them 3 times, they'll hear the message. And now, I mean, we're just inundated all the time. So. I know, isn't it sad? Yeah.
And everyone's trying to get 16, so there's just more and more.
Exactly. And then all the misinformation out there. I mean, it's much more complicated, so. Okay, do you want to move on to the target audience? So, was it you, Mark, that said there's different audiences for different actions? Is that correct?
Potentially, but also maybe different audiences for the same actions that would require different kinds of information or
Okay.
motivation, or their action. Sort of differences in cost. I'm thinking about a business versus a household or an agency.
All right.
And sort of thing that's locally focused versus some institution or group, or even, I guess even household that might not have a real Bend-centered focus or not.
Okay, so do you want to break those down by community members, businesses, agencies? Did I hear that correctly?
Or institutions. I don't know if we want to include nonprofits and government together.
Okay, are there any other segments?
This is more for, I guess this could go for both, but like homeowners versus renters.
Okay.
And I think Mark had mentioned this earlier, visitors or tourists.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. We're gonna break this down a little bit more, so you're not gonna be like tearing this down. No, you're okay.
Yeah, I realize, like, in terms of limitations, it's almost how many different groups do you think we could think about targeting? Or you just want to be aware of the kind of information they need, and hopefully we can address most of them with common action or common outreach, but.
Yeah. Well, you could do, I'm just gonna use the word campaign, it's just, we could do I'm gonna call it a generic or umbrella campaign about a key message. And then you could say, okay, after we've got that, now how are we gonna talk directly to businesses? So using some of that messaging, but maybe more tailored to them. And then do you work with Cyrus, BDAB, and does he send out a newsletter, for example, to those businesses? Do we go to the chamber? Do they send something out? Is there a forum where this could be talked about? So I think that's how we would break it down per those audiences. But I think starting with an umbrella message that you want everyone to kind of rally behind, and then tailor to each of the audiences. And then tactics to reach them.
Mhm.
So we have a section later about specific tactics. Okay. Okay, so what do we have, Cassie?
For the target audience?
Yes.
We have community members, businesses, agencies, and nonprofits. I separated homeowners, renters, and visitors.
Okay. Any others?
Are there other demographic breakdowns we want to think about?
Well, the next question is, what do each of these audiences think now? And what do you want them to think?
Well, I guess I'm thinking like English as second language and these sorts of things. Do we need to specify that sort of thing now, or is that part of city outreach already?
It's somewhat, it's a goal of city outreach. We're looking at it, and just looking honestly, if we have the funds to do everything in Spanish. And it's really everything, you know, we don't want to do just one thing in Spanish, so. I'm not sure right now, looking at the budget, we have the funds to reach all of these audiences in Spanish, unfortunately. But it's going to be a discussion for the next budget. Okay.
One other bucket that relates to incentives around these things is low income or income qualified for various incentives. But that's something else to think about.
Okay.
There could be different messaging there.
So how about this? Why don't we take, like, that would fall under community members. So let's just look at community members right now and just talk about demographics, psychographics, you know, who are they? What are the different, I'm looking at I don't really like to look at gender anymore, because I don't think that's necessary, but looking at, maybe like where they live, income levels, any barriers that groups within our community might have to reacting to the message. So why don't we take it group by group? And there can be crossover, okay? So I start with community members? Javi, do you have a question?
I was actually just gonna mention, because I know that there are community members, but then there were also homeowners and renters, and I feel like those are subcategories of
Yep.
residents, I guess, because also businesses can be considered community members.
Sure.
So I just wanted to mention that if that helps simplify it to
Sure.
fewer pools.
Yeah, we can put that homeowners, renters under, and just know that's a
It's one
subset of the
category.
category. Okay. All right, so let's talk about community members, demographics, psychographics. Who are they? What do they think? And I know you don't know what every single community member thinks, but just,
Are we talking about the categories like age, or are we segmenting it already right now, or are we just?
Or perspective, like people who are really bought in and are already activated to try to convince the city to be more progressive.
it's everything. You all
Yeah.
tell me. So, I mean, we're looking at who are we trying to reach? Who are they? What do they think? And what do we want them to think? And there's an aspect, which I'm gonna rely on all of you. I mean, is there a smaller percentage of folks who will never listen to what we have to say? Is there a percentage of folks just that don't care? I mean, maybe where's the sweet spot? And do we want to reach that group of folks first?
That's what I was thinking about, from sort of a decision theory,
Yeah,
behavioral persuasion, thinking about where we're going to have an effect with this outreach, where this has some impact, that there are people who already want to do something, they don't know what to do, and we're just
Right.
helping them, like, these are the best places to focus your effort, versus people who are torn, is this the best use of my time and the city's resources, and what kind of, and this is where sort of the input versus output part of it does feel a little tricky, in terms of whether we're trying to convince people to change behavior versus give them options and let them make decisions on their own.
So from what you all know as a group and studying the data, I mean, what do you all think? I mean, given limited resources, money, time, I agree with you. I mean, there are some folks we will just never, ever, ever convince. So let's hit the folks that we will. I mean, maybe down the road, we can think of efforts to maybe persuade folks. But so.
I think what the Yale Climate Communications Center would say is that, yeah, it's not, and this is more on like belief in climate change, but it's like not worth engaging deniers, but starting with the like moderate, moderately accepting and above.
And I would just add support for that. I think especially in the city of Bend, I feel like there is majority support and acknowledgement and support for climate action. It's more about people may not know what they can do. And so I think reaching that group seems like the best
Okay.
approach to me, at least.
So describing these community members, they have an awareness. They're already inclined to take action. They just don't know what to do.
I think that's one audience. I think there's an audience that in one piece of this communication that might not be the largest number of people, but the people that are able to take advantage of city resources better. So one of the challenges in a lot of these programs is the local specific question. So if I go online to try to find out information about any of the behaviors that we're talking about, I'm going to get information that's relevant, generally speaking, but not necessarily relevant to me living in Bend. And so I think there's a value in providing that locally relevant information that explains how everything works here, how our recycling system works here, how the transportation system works here, and how the, who your actual electric utility is, or where these incentives are, whatever that piece is. So I think there's like supporting the people that are already looking as one category, and then there's the other category is the people that have interest or curiosity but don't know what to do next. Like I think of those as kind of, maybe they share some resources, but those as different audiences.
audiences and how we reach them or how we talk to them?
Maybe how we reach them, because I mean, I
Yeah.
totally agree, and if there's a reason that people find this as a useful resource. And you're gonna increase traffic, you can then worry about teaching them more on the edge while they're getting something practical.
Yeah,
So how would you reach those two different audiences? I'm totally skipping down to another question, but I think it's helpful for this framework. How would you reach them? I ask this because there's not a lot of ways to reach people.
Yeah.
In Central Oregon.
totally.
I mean, you know, you've got probably like 5 main ways to reach folks, so. And if you have limited resources. And you two are in those different camps, but you're seeing the same message, how would those work together? I mean, I know it's my job to figure out, but just. Wanting to be, I think the more we simplify all of this, we're gonna have a better return.
Mhm.
What are the channels?
Yeah.
We have to distribute lunch, if they're a good.
You can do it
breaking
anytime.
point.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because I know when it sits too long, it gets.
Distribute away, distribute away.
Okay, why don't we distribute lunch and take like a 5 to 10 minute break and eat lunch?
You can be thinking about that question.
And we'll-
Yeah, are there
Alright,
any other questions about that?
Yeah,
How's this going so far?
Good.
great.
Good? Okay. Mary, how's it going for you? I want to hear.
You all online, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah, camera's on.
And Neil, are you keeping track if they raise them?
Yeah.
I would be curious how it was.
Oh, yeah, because the TV's wrong.
Most people were.
Oh, no. Can they?
I don't know.
They can see.
They can,
But, no, there we go.
there you go.
Wow. They just, it's like a new computer, isn't it? Yeah, it's all.
Perfect.
Are we back on?
All right, we're back.
We're back.
So weird. I'm talking about target audience, looking at community members. Have awareness, but need to know what they can do. Some are actively looking for information. Some aren't thinking about it quite yet. Okay, so I think we left there. How would you reach those two different audiences? Or is there
I
a
think-
enough distinction between those groups of people and how we would reach them to have two separate messages?
I think that the one is more resource based and one is more outreach based. I don't know if they're necessarily like, if you just build a resource website, which is, I think, the base level of what most communications kind of lean on,
Right.
especially the city.
Low
That-
hanging fruit.
Right, that might address some of those questions if it's done well. But then that's not going to really help the interested idle.
Great. Okay, so when we're looking at tactics, that I'm hearing, at a minimum, the website has to have all of the resources and what to do.
And local, yeah.
So,
Local, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
But I think,
And-
like, if you can message that. Here's what you can do, and you know, we can help you with how to do it, like, if you can somehow keep both of those things in one message. So the person comes like, oh, I'm looking for the thing, they can see that what they're looking for is going to be there. But somebody who might not be looking for as specifically for general guidance. Can see themselves in that too. It seems like it might be possible with one overarching message, but it has to be clear that go to the place there's more.
perfect, great.
And I would just add, this might be obvious, but I think from the standpoint of just having the information on a website versus having it in such a way that's easily digestible and that people actually want to consume versus just having a lot of text, for example. So I think it has to be like really for the layperson, like a very visually appealing format as well.
So just a side note, we are currently working on revamping our website. Did the website talk? No.
No, I was laughing because my like
Sandwich.
sprinkling like a microwave.
So we're working on two different parallel projects. One is just how do we kind of clean up the website right now? There's a lot of pages. Do we need all those pages? We're working with departments on doing that. And then we're also looking at a whole new platform. So almost like a new look and feel for the site with the end goal information that's really easy to find. So there'll be an opportunity, and Cassie and I already talked about it right now, to go in and look at your pages and how we make those include information, easy to read. So we can do that now, but just know there's a bigger project coming down the line. Okay? Does that sound fun? We have 978 pages on the website.
That's it.
Who said that's it?
I was wondering about the process to keep it updated if some of the information is evolving over time and how much we have to think about that. Part of the process, like information that needs frequent update or live updating.
Yeah. So the process has been right now is it's up to the departments to manage that. And some departments have folks that can update it. I mean, Cassie, she's a department of one. So we're partnering with her, our team, to help make those updates.
Well, I make all my own updates.
You don't have to do all of it moving forward if you don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah. You heard it here. Yeah, yeah. So just work directly with her, and then we can work together on what that looks like. if it's more than just like copy edits. Okay. All right, who's next? Do you want to talk about businesses? What do you want the businesses to know? Or who, I'm sorry, who are they? And then what do you want them to know? Why are we talking to businesses?
Do we need to think about I was asking this at lunch, if we need to think about the specific actions or behaviors we're trying to influence here at all? I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's the next
right.
question. What do they think? And what do they think now and what do we want them to think?
For community members.
For every audience, yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll just jump in on businesses. They are high impact for us because they are high, I'll call them like emitters generally in terms of having one business do something can have a much bigger impact than a single home or household. So it's a big category in terms of impact.
Okay. High users,
High users. yeah,
users
sure.
/ impact.
Yeah, and I think then you can break down categories a lot with the types
Okay.
of businesses or like the actions, whether it's like waste or energy.
Okay.
Yeah, and are you speaking to owners, managers, staff?
Okay. How are you talking to businesses now, or are you? No, okay,
Not really.
okay,
We have actions that do say to like that do deal with businesses though,
okay.
but we haven't implemented them yet.
So has there been any discussion on what businesses think of this right now?
I mean, we engaged with the business world around the home energy score through the through like real estate brokerages. So that was a direct business impact.
Okay,
Although the focus is on residential houses, it was funneled through the real estate world. So maybe slightly different messaging, but that's kind of a bridge, maybe not a specific business impact.
okay,
I'm on the board of this state law organization called Oregon Business for Climate, where it's focused on getting Oregon businesses as members and then kind of funneling their voice on state policy. And then part of that, sort of my responsibilities for local outreach and bringing in members and sort of helping with the process of trying to reach out to businesses that are climate friendly or should have a climate role. And through that, we sort of know which of the local businesses are really active on this, like Roughware and Hydroplast. But then there's some like Brooks Resources that's actually really involved and maybe a little bit surprising. So again, I think we probably, this wouldn't be a complete set, but we probably could think about ways of what are those businesses that are already demonstrating a climate ethic or priority or mission, and those who, and then even just categorically, it makes sense, like Mount Bachelor, we're talking about Bachelor, seems like a business that should be very sensitive to climate change. Things like that, where we could start to think categorically about who's
Okay.
got
I hate
motivation.
to go to execution, but I sometimes do that. Could you see a place where Brooks, Hydroplast, Roughware, Mount Bachelor could be spokespeople for this effort? So you could, feature Kirk Schuler talking about what Brooks is doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And looking at case studies.
Yeah.
What people are doing in town would be great.
I mean, it's a classic, method testimonials, but I think when you're talking about this subject, especially to appeal to folks that I want to do something, but I don't know what to do, and then they're seeing these businesses do something. And that could also cross over, I think, for community members and not just businesses as far as a testimonial.
I would just add to that point that I do think we're somewhat fortunate. I would say there are a lot of businesses, I get the sense, that are really interested in kind of reducing their impact or being more sustainable or taking climate action. And I think the city and the ECC can play a role in kind of helping give them more resources or connect them with other businesses in their industry, or just like take a lead role in like helping support those activities. Because I think a lot of businesses want to also show, both they care, but I think they also want to show that they care about the environment, because I think a lot of the community cares about the environment.
And I think can also speak to some messaging. Again, I'm going to energy use now, but like ETO has a great program to work with businesses on this stuff, and even some case studies where it's like, hey, we cut our energy use by 30%, we're saving a bunch of money. I think could speak to a lot of people.
So how they're saving and also what they're doing for our conversation during the break. I mean, what agency or who they're working with to make that impact or that change. It also gives it credibility.
Yeah.
Not only the city, but to the agency. Okay.
I,
Good news, I'm seeing how this is all coming together. You know, sometimes you have these conversations, you're like, I'm not so sure what the finish line's going to be, but right now I'm seeing some things gelling, so that's good.
Now, does the center have any business specific outreach experience or membership group or any way to?
We had focused more in the past, but we were like providing more services that were relevant before the internet, and then now they're not, so we don't do that as much. Yeah. You used to need a directory to find a place to buy recycled paper, and now you don't need that, so.
I guess the one thing the Environment Center still does is a sustainability awards, biannual thing or every 2 years. And businesses are one of the categories that recognize, so we do try and recognize businesses in that way, and there's, businesses get nominated or nominate themselves. But I think there's more opportunity there, and I know the Rethink Waste project specifically works with certain businesses on certain pilots. We talked about the plastic film recycling pilot, in our meeting 2 days ago or a couple days ago. So there's a little bit of that work. The last thing I just want to say is, especially when working with businesses and having kind of spokespeople or like highlighting them more as models, just being careful with greenwashing, especially,
What?
greenwashing. So making sure it's done in a way that's really, intentional and there's a deeper part of it, not just showing that they're environmentally sustainable.
It's not performative.
Exactly.
I mean, it has been interesting how much businesses want to hear, the first thing they want to hear about is what other businesses are doing, who else is a member, and they're very, I think businesses are generally very uncomfortable sticking their nose out or their neck out in some way farther, and so I do feel like that peer group, especially if that peer group has like some traditional longstanding businesses and not just clearly environmentally active kinds of organizations.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense of what share of commercial real estate is owned and operated versus managed by a property management company? I feel like a lot of smaller businesses probably don't own their buildings, and the property managers become a bigger deal. Yeah, and how we reach them. And on the energy side, I guess, especially.
Yeah, that's the own versus rent is not just homeowners and
Yeah.
home renters, but also businesses. I don't know what it is locally, but I know, like, generally speaking, depending on where you're at, it's between 40 and 60%.
Is which one?
Both.
Oh.
Yeah,
Both sides.
it's around half.
Yeah, around half.
Okay, let's talk about agencies. Why would they wanna work with us?
What are agencies or like, sorry,
I
my
guess
question.
I said that.
But I'm
I'm just
thinking
thinking about
like partners.
Institutional partner.
Yeah, like
Partners.
OSU, for example. So maybe agency is too specific.
Yeah,
maybe
CHP, like,
Partners.
organizations. I don't know.
Yeah.
well, and I have nonprofits separated, so we can talk about those together or separate. I mean, I think it makes sense to think about them separately, like, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how important this is. Maybe there's just a couple that we care about.
Yeah.
There obviously are state, and do we have any federal agencies with offices in Bend? But either way, like sort of where there's sort of a larger layer, and obviously OSU or COCC, those sorts of things seem pretty obvious.
And we do have Ben Lafine School District and
That's-
BPRD as
There
ex
you go.
officios
Yeah.
of this committee.
So just partners, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'm supposed to be writing.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm just thinking, I think this is kind of similar to businesses in a way where, again, we'd have like that umbrella message of what we want folks to do and then different tactics to talk to each of these groups, because they're so vastly different. I mean, there's, I think, one message on the why and then the action, and then how can they do it? Which, I mean, I'm not necessarily thinking we're gonna reach Bend Parks and Recs through a source ad. I mean, they might see it, because they're people first, right? They're doing people things, reading the paper like, oh, this is interesting, and it comes up at work, oh, I saw this, but how is it specific to that entity?
Sorry. I think a lot of the agencies, a lot of information gets exchanged through the direct relationships that we have as opposed to just,
Yeah.
Content that's out there.
Right.
So.
I think more of that is aligning their plans, right? Like it's trying to align the communication and align the goal and objective, like the system development charge process, not an outreach thing, but aligning with BPRD to like have similar paths forward that meet the goals that we share. I saw a hand over here.
Yeah, so it just relates to my early comment of one of our purposes of elevating some of the work that other agencies are doing. So not necessarily the agency as an audience itself, but like their audience, us being a partner to help them reach their.
Well, especially for the state level entities, like the opportunity to lead by example and, building some consistency across the state and municipal and higher ed.
Okay, I feel good about this. I'm ready to move off of audience. Are you all feeling good about this?
Yep.
I just, there'll be an opportunity. Once this is all done, we'll put this like in a creative brief format and you can all look at it. So there'll be an opportunity to add anything. This is the last chance. Okay, we're gonna talk about tone of the messaging. So I often say, like, think if the person was talking to you, how would you want them to be speaking to you? What would the tone of their voice or their attitude be? So what's the tone? Can I give examples if you want examples, or I can leave it up to you? I don't want to like, lead the audience here.
Kind of friendly,
Friendly,
inviting.
okay? Positive, friendly, inviting, positive,
Encouraging and supportive.
encouraging, supportive.
I don't think this is tone, but I think there's a really helpful like neighbor to neighbor
Okay,
piece of this, that when you see other people doing it, there's much more likelihood of you doing it in your immediate community.
Yeah.
And there's studies on that
Collective.
too. Yeah.
like collective community, camaraderie.
I've been thinking about that a lot, sort of the peer effects and how a lot of information, just knowing that your neighbor's doing something or that most people in your community are doing something, how compelling that's been shown to be. So how we join the club, sort of a message.
Social norming.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Do you think it's, it sounds like friendly and inviting, encouraging, so there's no like threatening, scaring?
Depends
Well, I
on
mean,
the
that is a
program.
tactic that sometimes works for people. I mean, so just, I want to kind of understand the guardrails here.
Do we want smoke and wildfire?
Yeah, if you don't do this, then I'm not sensing that is the tone of all of you as a committee, but I could be wrong.
I mean, it's a good question, right? Like 42% of childhood asthma, can be connected to stoves. Like, do we want messages like that out there, or is that not our part? I think it's just a good question to ask.
Great question.
I was just gonna mention, I went to this conference last year and there was a presentation on, they actually did a study comparing the different appeals, like emotional versus logical versus psychological. And I can't remember off the top of my head which was the most effective, but it did depend on the message, and that was waste reduction oriented, so that's just one category. But I do wonder, I think it would make sense to do a little bit more research on seeing what is the most effective.
I think it's almost always emotional.
I think, yeah.
I remember seeing somewhere that the doom and gloom message, if it's not followed by, and here's what you can do, then people just spiral.
Yeah.
And so I think if you do that, it's very important to say, but there's hope, right? And like have that upswing so that people aren't just like, this is horrible. And I'm powerless.
But Andrew's saying, I agree. I think the most productive messaging is when it is emotional, when you tap into someone's emotion, because you can really get them to do something. So it's getting to like the why. I mean, why is the work you're doing important?
Alex.
Okay, Alex, sorry.
No, that's okay. I agree with, everything that folks have been saying. And along the same lines, I'm thinking about a lot of the work I do in my day job around, policies that try and reduce like food-related emissions and looking at, consumption-based inventory and things like that. And a lot of it is tasking government to do something as opposed to the general public. But we've done a lot of focus groups and public opinion surveys around messaging, like how to message these types of policies to get the general public engaged and interested and to take action voluntarily. So a lot of it has come back saying what's been said already, and also instead of using the kind of like negative words that are less or words indicating that like something will be taken away, kind of reframing it as what will be gained, or highlighting the positive. I don't know if that makes sense, and it'd probably be easier to explain with a specific example, but when I'm looking at the carbon impact of different types of foods, for example, instead of making recommendations for shifting towards like less carbon intensive foods, not framing it in a way that makes it feel like a person is losing out on something, but instead focusing on the gains and the positives. So yeah.
Healthier and sustainable versus
Mhm.
no meat.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. One other thing I think is, we talked about this too, but like really tapping into what's special about Bend and like why this can help Bend. Tahoe did a great campaign, Keep Tahoe Blue, that was really about like the health of the lake and the community. And anyway, I think there's some of that we can really tap into. People love our community. And so like tapping into that part of this. Okay.
We're up to actually early today.
Bye, Rory.
Take care.
Contributions. Okay, and let's go back to the why. So can we just do like quickly, what is the why behind what you're doing? I love quickly, but this is kind of a hard question. Quickly. So what's the why? To the emotional aspect.
I think it's important to attach it to something that's tangible. I mean, for me, the one equalizer in the summer is usually the wildfire season.
Okay.
And it doesn't, Neil and I were kind of talking about this a little bit, and it's something cuts across all the stakeholders. You don't have to agree on why it's happening, but you can agree that it is happening. So
Yeah, there are more wildfires.
there are more
Okay.
wildfires. Like how we got here, it sort of doesn't really matter. The question is, how do you reduce it moving forward? Because it does impact everybody very equally.
Yep.
Well, unequally. I mean, the less fortunate don't have as much of an opportunity to get out of those tough conditions sometimes and otherwise. But I think, to go back to your question, the why is, it's got to be something tangible.
It's a great example. Others? These are again broad, but like, yeah, clean air, clean water, healthy community. I think those are a couple whys. Great. We can talk about emissions, but I think it's not going to resonate with most people.
Well, that's what I was wondering about that, in terms of sort of, is there this ethical self-identity that Ben wants to be a leading community? We need to do this so we accomplish our goals, and so we can honestly all feel good about ourselves, and like sort of you're contributing to the community, and you individually, we need you for this community to achieve its potential in its role. It's like climate and attaching individual behaviors to climate outcomes is always like so challenging, I feel personally. Maybe most people, like, I think a lot of people are okay with that gap, but if there's something that is a little bit more tangible, even though it's a global benefit, but basically tying it to something about the identity of Bend.
Do you think that represents how the city of Bend feels? I feel like any messaging has to be really authentic to who the group is, or the entity, the business, the organization. So are you suggesting that it's reflective of the entire Bend community?
That we as a community want to be this kind of community,
Okay.
and we want to think of ourselves as this kind of community, and to do that, we have to do these things.
Okay.
And to play this role almost as a single actor relative to other communities in Oregon.
And maybe maybe related to that is the like. Doing it as trying to provide something better for future generations or kind of the next people. And so I think that both has a tie and is a message in the climate world, but also in Bend as a community of like, where are we going? This town is changing, this town is growing. We want to be able to shape where we're moving. So tying those things together, I think can be powerful.
That's really good. Well, it kind of ties into also what we're working on with growth and trees.
Mhm.
You know how my brain works, we hold that real quick, is looking at. There's only so many resources the city has, so, and there's a lot of different issues and subjects. So how do they all relate to one another? And I see connection between growth, trees, and what you just said.
Yeah.
Bingo, Neil. I'm like, write that down. She's like, which part? Yes, write that down. Yes, Bobby, did you have something?
Yeah, I think I was just gonna add to what Mark said. I'll be honest, especially living in Bend and having been here for 5.5 years now. I feel like a lot of people really, obviously, like I think there's like a natural inclination to care about the environment because we're so outdoors. There is such a culture of being outdoors focused. But in terms of hearing about that a lot from the city or from like feeling that message out in the community, I don't see there's much. And I feel like there's almost more of a need for that to be out there. And I think there's probably, you can never speak for the community as a whole, but I think there's general support for kind of seeing the city take more leadership on that role on that. And the city has said the environment is one of its priorities. And we have the CCAP and we're doing this work right here. But I feel like general community doesn't hear about this as much. And I think both, like, there are specific actions that we need to do communication for, but also I think this is an opportunity to really create a comprehensive kind of like, what is that message you want to get out that the city is being a leader in this role.
Okay.
And then I found that study. Can I just share that real quick?
Sure.
I think it,
Oh, wow, look at that. Visual, wow, ready to go.
so they actually did empathetic messaging, this is all recycling focused. So again, I think it matters what the message is. But this was empathy was we get it, it can be confusing. Logic was recycling makes sense. And then emotion was we have to do better, but just a huge pile of waste there. And any guesses on which one was most effective? Can you all see?
So you guessed the.
I'm gonna go with
empathy.
I'm gonna go with empathy.
I did, yeah.
It was empathy.
Yeah.
So did the control and 10,000 households. So 38% increase in average root tones was empathy. And emotional was 16, so it's next.
So I sort of wonder about that a little bit when you look at like the photo selections. Like
It's
And
so
also with
messaging specific.
The
too,
best
yeah.
campaign.
yeah,
Yeah.
people look, I mean, the other ones are cartoon, you got them looking at a pile of trash.
That's fair.
I don't think it's quite that. cut and
Not
dry, but-
taking too much out of it, but
Yeah.
but I do wonder how much of this is available for some of the specific messages we'll
Mhm.
be doing. And I do think it would be helpful to do some of this research for those messages as we craft it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. That was great. I love that. When I'll say back to the photo, I understand the emotional take, but when I look at that, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit.
The emotional one.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
it feels, yeah, we've heard that. But I feel like the empathy actually is reaching people where they are like, oh, I really want to do this, but I don't know how, and I'm too embarrassed to ask, and I know I should do this.
I don't know where to find those.
Where to
resources.
find,
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
And the
Am I supposed to
audience,
flush the toilet when I'm supposed to, I mean, like, people
Yeah.
put those things, like, what am I supposed to do? And you kind of feel, I think sometimes stupid, and you don't know where to ask, so.
and a print publication is different than like if you were if somebody was telling a story
Yeah.
of why this was important to them, I think that would probably make more sense than like, this is what a number two, we don't use that symbol anymore, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like the logic versus the, yeah. I think it depends on the context of how it's being
Right.
shared.
Okay, before we move on, are there any other whys? Like,
Well,
well,
if you just double down on the future generations one, I don't have kids, but when
Double
I
down.
did some climate communications work. With colleagues, I would say most people
mhm,
brought in their kids as part
Yeah.
of their why.
yeah,
And that could be both like wanting the world to be there for your kids and also like wanting what your experience has been. What
Right.
like some elements of that, like wanting that to be there for
yeah.
future generations, so I'm
And-
just building on Neil's point.
And I'm looking at some climate change communication stuff too, so reduced costs is another message that resonates. And health, I think, compared, and protecting God's creation are messages that weren't brought up yet.
Actually, one of the questions I had on here, which you've been referencing, do you all have a place you are keeping other communications that you've seen? It might be a good exercise for you all to store them someplace and write like what you like about it, what you don't like about it. That'd be really helpful.
Okay.
If someone would do that, thank you.
Should we start a Pinterest?
You
board?
can send them to.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I love it. How long?
Send them to me and I'll do it.
Okay.
I don't know if a Pinterest board.
I think a
has any
Pinterest board-
Specific restrictions, the
It's,
city.
there's no commenting going on.
Kathy,
We'll
we-
put in there to public records laws.
but it'd be
public
great
meetings
to
laws.
know like what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna give you all a couple minutes to think about this. So, but we're gonna go around the room. Everyone has to participate. Like such a teacher. If you were gonna write a headline for what you want to convey, what would it say? Okay, does not need to be clever, doesn't need to have plain words. You can just what we call straight line. If you're just gonna be one sentence, one line, based on what we've talked about today, what would it be? I know this could be easy for some and challenging for others, but again, no right, wrong answers, just. And really, the first thing maybe that comes to your mind might be the best thing.
I mean, I think with Home Depot and you can do it, we can help.
Okay, great, way to go. Yes, yes,
That
please.
was
But that premise, right? You can do it, we can help,
we can do it,
Yeah,
yeah, collective.
something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need your help,
Okay,
or Ben needs your help.
okay, Ben needs your help.
Ben needs you on the team.
Okay,
I would say something probably a little more long-winded, something like,
that's okay.
the citizens of Bend, citizens of Bend have identified climate action as a priority, and we are trying to develop tools for all of our stakeholders to have an impact.
Great.
Something like that. I
Okay.
might think of another draft or two of it.
Great, thank you. Neil?
I think the collective message, so yeah, we are moving towards this vision, like join a board. We can help. Come
Yeah.
aboard, yeah, all aboard, there you go.
Okay, so yeah, similar to these, I think the collective, which, anyway, I like that Tahoe one, but something like keep Bend green, protect our winters, obviously is like, an existing thing, but I think something in that realm. Or I think there's something else powerful that's like, again, we'd have to do some surveys to get this, but like X% of your neighbors are either interested in taking action or taking this action, but something that goes more to that. Yeah, people are already doing this, like, you should be doing it.
Kelly raised her hand online.
Yeah, sorry, my, not so great, so I've been keeping my video up, but trying to listen in, hopefully you can hear me okay. What I've used in the past that I found to be super effective is just like a data point or a fact. Like one quick example around like cigarette butts, they don't really, or they disintegrate over time, and I would give like the exact amount of time that they would disintegrate. And that you have action, that you have agency, you can have an impact in this area, and that way you're sort of scoping it so they understand the problem. But also that they can take action relatively easily and have impact.
You have a great background, by the way, Kelly.
It's beautiful.
It's not my place.
I came up with this. Concerned about climate change in Bend, question mark. Here are 3 things you can do.
Very directed to the point.
Yeah.
Great. So side note, I worked on a campaign for the Shoots River Conservancy, probably like 10-15 years ago. And the line was, what if there is no river? I know it's not grammatically correct, but we took photos of common scenes with people integrating or using the river, but the river was gone. So like a fisherman, folks by having a picnic by Drake Park, but there, was no water. So
Did you have a tuber?
no, we didn't have that. No. So,
Out of orders.
but, I think one of you hit on, it was you, Lauren, like, we want Malvaxer to be here. We want there to be snow. And what would happen if that went away?
Yeah, I mean, really going to that very succinct bumper sticker kind of slogan. I don't know if we've had anything like that around here, because that's one of the things with Keep Tahoe Blue, the bumper sticker. was a big deal.
Everywhere, yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and it's distilling or synthesizing a lot of complicated things about land use and nutrients and I worked on water quality trading there for a long time, and it's really complicated, but getting it all to blue and that lake clarity indicator. I don't know if there is, and it's kind of like Kelly's point about one fact. If we think there is, even if we know it's incomplete, one key indicator of climate in Bend. Like the river flow, the snowpack, the smoke days, there are a lot of good candidates. I
Right.
don't know if that's.
Keep Bachelor
Yeah.
White.
Oh my God.
Keep
Then
sky blue, maybe like
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
Bend sky blue, so keep it sunny,
But
keep
I
Bend
think-
sunny.
Think about what that would stir up here.
I'm sorry, but the snowpack, I think, is also another, like, a better way to
Yeah.
phrase that, but
Mhm.
that would.
And then I also just want to make sure that Alex and Serena, if they wanted to participate in the you will be called on component,
Yeah.
think about it. But Kelly is off mute, so she probably has something to contribute too.
I was just, what I've found isn't as effective as showing like dire circumstances. So showing more sort of optimism, but also key actions that they can take and like little tidbits that will remain in their mind so that they don't feel overwhelmed or pessimistic. It's easy for them to disengage. But by giving them those data points that they understand their role.
And
Wanna call
Serena
Alex?
has her hand raised.
Yes, hi, I agree with Kelly. I think optimism for sure, having a data point makes sense. Monetizing or sending some kind of impactful statement that people feel like they can be compelled to act on has been a positive experience. That's it.
Thanks.
Great. Any other thoughts? Wasn't that fun? Don't you want to write headlines for a living now? Okay. We only have 19 minutes or 18 now, actually. So I'm wondering.
And if we could have like just 2 minutes at the end.
Okay,
you are
great.
fine.
We have
We just have one
15
closeout thing.
minutes. Okay, so I'm thinking though, when we talk about energy, waste, transportation, there's a part of all messaging that I like to look at. Why is this believable? What do we have to do in those 3 areas? Is that something that Cassie and I can just work on? Or are there specific messages you want to get out around energy, waste, transportation that all ladder up to that message you just shared with me? Does that make sense? Is there something specific about waste you want to talk about? Okay, let's start with waste.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think there's a bunch, we probably can't even get through all of them right now, but maybe during the ones that are top of mind.
Yeah, if we want to get through all three, and then I just have
Dig in more.
the end of my questions are pretty easy, so I think this is probably the most important of what I have remaining. Okay, so waste first, go.
And I would say waste materials actually has a lot of actions related, specifically calling out some of those education outreach pieces. The one thing I'll say to keep it brief is there is the waste hierarchy that most people are aware of, the reduce, reuse, recycle. The only thing I'll say is that there's often much more emphasis paid on the recycle end and less on the reduce and reuse end. And so I think that's an opportunity to kind of really get that message out that that's where you can have the most impact, most bang for your buck is reduce and reuse.
Great.
And then recycling is also important, but it's not the magic bullet.
Excellent. So people understand recycling, we need them now to understand reduce and reuse.
Yeah. And also how to recycle right too.
Oh, well, that's a whole.
That's always.
But I really don't want to talk about right now,
Yeah.
like, 'cause I'm frustrated, okay.
And compost, yeah. So
Okay.
not to oversimplify, but yeah, there's other
Okay.
pieces, repair.
Any other things on waste? Alex, Kelly?
Is there business specific stuff we want to bring up?
There is on composting, on lots of businesses do have very high waste streams. So I think there's a huge opportunity, but I do think it would be two different messaging on those. I think
Yeah.
business waste versus residential waste.
Is there going to be, I'm sorry if I missed someone saying this, is there going to be another opportunity to, like, for example, for all of us to kind of think more on the specific actions we want to suggest and type them all up and put them in one place so we can see everything?
Yeah, we'll continue working on this, like in the working groups as we actually
Okay.
out content and figure out an action plan. So this is just kind of meant to give us a big picture framework that we'll continue to work on together.
Got it. Thank you.
But not through a
Okay.
shared file.
But not through a shared file.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on waste? Okay, transportation, our favorite subject right now. What's the prompt again?
Just what are like the key messages for each of these, knowing that like we won't comprehensively be able to go through all of them, but just what are the ones that are top of mind for you?
Don't drive your gas car so much by yourself. You're like implicitly talking about.
I love that. That's.
The distillation of the way that we talk about transportation is reduce how much you're driving and electrify what's left. And so that's not necessarily a message to share. That's like a policy screen and strategy. But I think something around options, like providing and using options, and the transportation tools that we have. I don't know.
It seems like the street sweepers are out a lot more than I've noticed before this time of year. And so I've been on my bike and I feel like they're almost sort of this complementary thing. You know, Bend is a good place to bike and we're getting better and the city's really focused on it and the city's investing in it and it's getting safer. and easier.
That's great. I wasn't sure where the sentence was going when you said, I need more street sweepers. I'm like, oh.
Let's get the bike lane though.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, anything else on transportation?
I feel like there could be something around just like, it can be fun and enjoyable, like walk or
Okay.
bike, or like you be outside in your transportation. Like, it is a fun place, but.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think, yeah, some promotion of electric vehicles and. Again, I think there's a pretty high percentage in this town comparatively, and it would be good to get some of that data. Of like X% of, the community is like, has switched to an EV. Could be something interesting, but we have to collect some.
We have that data is easy. We have it, yeah, because it's like every quarter, every half
Oh, cool.
year. I think
Okay.
it's-
Or by county and zip code, but if you want to do city, they have to pull it out, and we've done that like for reports, but not on a regular.
Oh,
basis.
yeah, but even just seeing the county,
That like
you kind of
social
see
proof would be
the,
helpful,
yeah.
if it looks.
Okay,
I'm driving around to probably. do
Yes.
this.
okay, let's move on to energy.
Did you have one more copy?
I was
Oh,
just
sorry,
saying,
Bobby.
I was gonna support Mark's one. I like that. It's a good place to bike and it's getting better. I like that. Both
Okay.
like it's good and it's getting better. And then I just want to say like Bend is a very dense, like compact city, at least not dense, but compact, like it's not very broad. So I do think that's a good part of that message as well.
Energy,
I
prompt
think
again is what's the. what do you want to
generally, the most
convey?
effective is save money
Okay,
message for individuals and businesses. Secondary, health.
I think resiliency
Hmm.
kind of resonates with everybody, those unduly affected by power insecurity or whatever it happens to be. On top of people that live in more remote areas that may have different political views from somebody downtown.
Mhm. Okay, I'm gonna skip the next question. It's is there any mandatories? We can come back to that, like something that like the messaging has to include. We can come back to that, right? Okay. Okay, time frame. You had a magic wand and all of this was out in Bend. When would you want that to happen? Is there any key event or time of year, milestone?
Birthdays in a month, how's that?
Not gonna happen.
We got
I
four
had
whole
a feeling that maybe when I said that, I was like, someone's gonna say Earth Day.
I was just gonna say, I think we talked about this year.
Okay, sometime in 24.
We want before or after the election, does that matter?
Oh, golly. See, it's a really good point, which kind of feeds into my next question. Like, is there a budget to create? Is there a budget for media?
There's a
So,
little bit to work with.
okay. So there's some, some things that we can definitely do and, partner with other folks. Like if you're looking like to produce a TV ad, that's challenging for our team to do, but we could partner with someone. So we just don't know if there's a budget for that. And then running media, you bring up a great point, Mark. It's really hard to run media from around like September through the election. Mainly October, because they have to give priority to all the candidates and it's really expensive.
I wonder if there is something to just capitalizing on the attention and momentum of a presidential election year. I
That's
feel
what
like
I
there's
was-
more people paying attention to political issues. And it may
Mhm.
be something around
Mhm.
sharing talking points or messaging with candidates that want to represent that message.
Yep.
Those messages. And I think it's, in my mind, kind of on both sides of the political aisle. There's financial reasons to conserve energy. There are environmental reasons and I see that as being a big opportunity.
Do we have an idea, sorry, of time, because it feels, I was thinking the same thing, we either want to be a good amount before the election or right after, like immediately after while people are paying attention. I don't know, maybe you have a better sense of that, especially honestly, if Trump gets elected, people want to do something.
Yeah, it's tricky because summer months more affordable. There's not a lot of people here though. So people are traveling and then you get into election and then November, December are also expensive because of the holiday. So we're not talking about a national scale, so it's all relative, but we will have,
Gift of clean energy.
yeah, we will have some constraints around third and fourth quarter of this year.
I guess I'm more curious of an ongoing strategy because there are lots of things that independently will need a communication strategy. If there's a Solarize campaign, then like there's things that we have to do about that.
Mhm.
If there's, like individual things, like
Energy audit.
these are on all of these goals, not all of these goals, a lot of these goals have ongoing components that will happen for years. And so I think figuring out a communication strategy for the CCAP as a whole is helpful. And like, what does that look like is helpful. But then my big question is like, how do we tie in what does that look like over time with individual things that are coming up that do have that timing piece? We don't have a communication strategy, so we can't just say like, well, our transportation really wants to communicate about walk and roll to school and work month in May, because we don't have any strategy. We've not done any communication. We don't know what channels or budget or anything like that.
Sure, okay.
It seems like ideally you could do sort of some initial launch, but then you building and reinforcing that brand
Yeah.
over time, where you could use it for that month, you could use it for Earth Day, you could use it for whatever the shorter term campaign needs are.
Okay. That's helpful.
I guess I would ask, are there any community events that are sort of coming up in a reasonable time frame for your team and like us to get something together that could be fun places to announce this? Like in the summer, there's lots of things happening in Drake Park and whatever. Anyway, just something to think about. Okay, where people are outside.
I mean, I think-
activity, enjoying nature.
Yeah, it would help to define like what this is still, so I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
there's just a little bit more work that needs to be done for us to really figure out like what we're talking about, and I think that would affect the timing and all of those sorts of things.
And maybe the first day of the year, we get an AQI over 200.
Yeah, well, because I think like to Neil's point, like I think it's first kind of building like the structure in place so that we can even be getting messages out there, and then you can kind of like fine tune those things with the timing, or like once we have it. But right now there's just, we have all these ideas, like these things to say and know where to say them right now. So it's first like making them even out there. Which is why I think the website has come up a lot as kind of the first place, and then being able to build things from that. And I know that we've heard some ideas from some of the working groups about like a mailer. So there are like those things are definitely on the table. And I think if we're talking about a mailer, we can talk about the right time to do that. But I don't know that just from this discussion today, we've gotten quite that far yet.
So my next question, which you can all think about, so I'm gonna give you 5 minutes left in your day, is what are the tactics? Like, is there a mailer, print ad? Think of all the things that come to mind. And then the last question is, what does success look like? I think it's always good to have a measurement stick here. Like, do we want to measure behavior? Do we want people to be more aware? How are we going to track that? So, there's a lot of people who just run campaigns and they just run them and say, oh, that was great. And say, oh, that was wildly successful. But what is that based on or rooted in? So I don't know if we can track anything, but that be thinking about that as well. And that's it.
So what are next steps?
I like you.
I think my thought, without not having like a project plan necessarily, I was thinking we would just take these to the working groups and then kind of come up with, what that project plan is. If that's okay with you guys. And I don't know, Renee, you have a way of distilling this information
Related to
today?
this, put it all into a document called a creative brief. Get it back out to all of you, however you want to gather feedback. And then from there, really looking at, are we agreement or aligned on what we want to communicate, how we're going to communicate it, where we're going to communicate it, timing and money. And then we go
I
from
almost
there.
think it's like, do we need a group that just works with Renee? Instead of the whole committee? Does that make sense?
For each working group or for the whole, like?
Maybe
would
it's
you
like a
go-
person from each
somebody
working
else.
group
I like
that like
that
works
idea.
with Renee.
Sure. Of course.
We can debrief
Yeah.
after this and
Yeah.
we can talk together.
Right. So the next step would be to see this and weigh in
On the tactics or just the
on
whole thing?
everything.
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess I was just gonna add one last comment to what Mark mentioned just a little while ago. I do like that idea. I think during smoke season especially, I think there's a lot of articles about climate change at that time. So I feel like this could be an impactful time to release this if it's available by then, if that's possible, or like the summer right before that. Because I do feel like those are really high engagement times. So it feels like to get this out, if that seems like a reasonable timeline on the production end.
And there's just a lot of unknowns, so I don't want to overly commit without chatting with my partner over here. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
You all did a great job. Well, some people sit there and like, I don't know what to say, you know? So thank you for being engaged and answering and asking good questions.
Try more the other side, but we're all worried we're gonna talk too much.
Oh, gosh, no. No, I've done this before and people said nothing. You're like, okay. Bye, y'all. Thank you.
I think.
Okay, the last thing was just to do agenda review really quick, so. For April, we didn't actually have any major agenda items, so in talking with Neil and Lauren, I'll definitely do a report back from the work session that we're having next week and just kind of map out those next steps. But then we were thinking we would have just a report out from the working groups. Does that sound like a good use of the time to everyone? And do you all feel like the working groups have substantive stuff that they'd like to bring back and share?
And also partially like. You have a month to make something substantive to bring back. You're on notice.
I mean, and there even are things as part of this outreach, I feel like there's homework we could do. in each
Yeah,
of
that's
these.
true. We could, yeah.
Like building on this would be good to get some
Yeah.
momentum.
So how about each of the working, which I think was kind of the plan for the next working group meeting, but each working group kind of lead from the discussion today and then start to kind of figure out, like, I think what the next steps are, and then also continuing to like refine, the actual messages itself. And then, so I like that idea. We can focus that discussion on not just a general working group report outs, but like continuing the communications discussion. And we'll kind of, with respect to the working groups. Does that sound good?
It does. So just to clarify, so we'll be kind of have the creative brief by then and then be able to use that in our working groups to kind of like.
Hopefully so. I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess we didn't ask her what the turnaround time is on that, but when I follow up with her, I'll see if that's something she can get out like within the week.
Yeah.
And then the energy and the waste and materials group have meetings that we have planned or are scheduling and this has been a high area of interest for those two groups. For the transportation groups, for Neil and Mark, do you feel like you also want to tackle this communications topic specific to transportation? And do we have capacity to do that in the next month? We haven't talked about it as much in that group. We also don't have specific outreach actions in transportation. So
Right.
I don't think we need to force it, just knowing that we're all busy. We don't have to like force that right now if we want to focus on energy and waste, but I don't want to miss it either.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to keep. The general momentum moving with the other things and as the group as a whole, and then. As those are built out and there's opportunities in the transportation space, then we can engage. And if some of the messaging is collective of like, these are the three areas, then obviously we'll participate.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I think part of it is this is kind of fun to think about the messaging, so I feel like I'll just want to do that anyways for transportation and whether it becomes an agenda item or not, but we can mix it in. And it does feel like if we want to get something together within a few months, we need to start doing that, so.
Okay. So do you guys want to have a working group meeting?
Oh, we haven't in a while. I feel like we should.
Yeah.
And we can follow up on some of the UV stuff too, so.
Mhm.
Okay, that's great.
Quick question. Is it just the two of you in the working group? Is there anyone else?
Rory.
Okay, just want to make sure.
But we're
Always open to
always
more.
open.
I was not expressing interest.
And then in May, we're planning on starting the CCAP update launch. And so that will be, the May meeting will be just going through a progress report of the CCAP and then identifying which actions are complete. So we can move them to a complete list and take them out of the CCAP list. And so I'll kind of come with a proposal for you of like, these are the ones I suggest we move off and, we can have a discussion if you guys agree with that. So that'll be May. And then in June, we'll be refining the existing actions and then kind of kicking off the new action development, which is obviously like the biggest part of it all. So that's what we have coming up.
Great.